Hello guys and welcome back to FatbossTV. Today we're having a look at the newest 5-man that's been released on the Legion Alpha and probably the most controversial 5-man that is going to be released on the Legion Alpha, which is the brand new Violet Hold.
Yes, Violet Hold, everyone's favourite instance. Yeah. Now this takes place in the familiar old prison of Violet Hold, and it has some repaired architecture as well as some purple mood lighting, as well as some new bosses and trash. Now the trash does follow the same formula as the old Violet Hold, where you fight off 6 different waves of ads from portals, and then you get a boss, and you do that 3 times and you're done. The bosses selected are out of a random pool of 6 bosses for the first and second boss slot, and then 2 different bosses that you can face as your final boss.
In this video, instead of going straight into our personal opinions and talking about how shit this instance really is, we're going to talk about the bosses because it's not all negative. Some of the bosses are quite interesting, they do bring some pretty cool mechanics, and then we'll also talk about the trash.
Yeah, and we'll go through all of it. But first off, let's look at the happy side of things and have a look at these new bosses. Let's start off with Maleficent Manastorm, and this is actually Milhouse Manastorm's wife. When she comes out of a portal, like an image of Milhouse appears, and he's like, oh shit, she's gotten out. So there's obviously something going on between them, but she has some really cool abilities. One of them is an Elementium Squirrel Bomb. This is a bomb that will be thrown out somewhere nearby, and after around 10 seconds it will explode, dealing group-wide damage. You can disarm the bomb by right-clicking on it, and that will just cause the bomb to deactivate. Whether or not you disarm the bomb, it will still spawn a few micro squirrels that will rush to some random player nearby and explode, dealing a small amount of damage. These squirrels do have actually some HP, you can kill them off, but they just run to a target so quickly that it's kind of impossible to do.
You don't really have time to swap, so you just need to like click the bomb, disarm it so the raid doesn't take AoE damage, and then the squirrels just spray out in random directions.
It's pretty funny.
It's pretty cool.
Even better though is the thorium rocket chickens. These mechanical robot chickens will spawn somewhere nearby and just spam rocket chicken rocket. Oh god. And this will just cause a line to spawn across the room that will deal damage and knock back anyone along its path. And these chickens can be killed, and you really should, as they do build up rather quickly, and you don't want to have to be constantly moving all over the place, so make sure you finish off the chickens so they don't get too out of hand.
Miss Manastorm will also apply random dots to players. They don't hit very hard, you just need to make sure you just like throw a heal on them or two. And once she reaches around 50% health, Milhouse insults her haircut and she gets mad and starts spawning enhanced versions of her bombs and of her chickens. The enhanced bomb will just keep spawning even more squirrels, so you just got to make sure you really keep on top of the disabling, and the chickens now become invulnerable, so you can no longer kill them, so you need to try and finish the fight before too many chickens are up. And at 10% she'll stun the entire group, run towards the entrance, and shrink herself. This makes it so she can't be hit by any spells or attacks, they just constantly miss.
Yeah.
Although one interesting thing, dots still tick on her.
You might be able to kill her before she gets out, because what she does, she just kind of walks through the crack in the door and is like, see you later.
Yeah.
So I can totally see her appearing maybe in a later dungeon.
Well, if you go in a group of like 4 boomkins or something and just all reapply the dots before the stun, then potentially you might be able to kill her. Probably not.
Yeah, she'll probably go to 1 health, but either way, it's quite funny. So she just leaves, and that's it. She does leave a box of loot for you, though, so she still gives you shit. And Milhouse isn't very happy about it and goes off, like, running after her. So yeah, it's going to be cool. We're going to see what happens with that storyline. But yeah, that's Miss Manastorm and her crazy squirrel and chicken bombs. It's great.
Another potential boss you can have is Festerface. This is basically a Festergut reskin.
Yeah.
I don't know if it even is a reskin.
I think it might be the exact same either way.
Either way, it's Festergut. He has a vomit. He'll just spray in a frontal cone in one direction. If you're caught by this, you take a load of damage. But at the same time, this also spawns 3 little gooey ads. These ads just do constant ticking damage to the raid, and it starts ramping up really fast. So what you need to do is you need to kill them off. However, when you do kill them off, after 12 seconds, they'll just congeal and respawn and just start dealing ticking damage on the raid again. However, if you drag Festerface, over one of the ads that is dead, then he'll eat them up and they'll just be completely removed from the encounter. So that is actually all the mechanics in this fight.
Yeah, you just kill ads, drag boss over them, and repeat until he dies.
And that's it.
One thing that did happen to us is that he died during his vomit, so the vomit was in midair and the ads hadn't spawned. So he died, then the ads spawned afterwards and they didn't despawn. So we had them permanently. You could kill them as many times as you want, and we couldn't do the instance anymore. So that's something that probably needs to be fixed. Another thing that needs to be fixed is this next boss, but she is still very cool, which is Shivermaw, which is an ice dragon. Now this dragon has dragon mechanics. She has a frontal breath that will slow you and hurts a lot, so make sure you use a CD as a tank, and also a tail swipe if you're behind her, so make sure you also stand at the side. She'll also knock the tank back with a giant wind blast, so it's even more important that you don't stand in front of her as a DPS or a healer. She will also cast a Relentless Storm that will call down loads of icy meteors to rain down upon your group, so you got to make sure that you do move out of these swirly circles. The whole time that she is on the ground, the upper parts of the instance are coated in like this icy blanket that will hurt you if you stand in it. But the problem is, it gives you ridiculously bad FPS problems.
Yeah, you might have thought there was a problem with this video being rendered, but it really isn't.
No, it's like 20 frames
Everyone's
a second or
on
something.
like 15, 20 frames a second. It's really, really bad.
But periodically she does fly up in the air and she'll lob down an ice bomb. If you're on the ground floor of the instance when this lands, it will do a large amount of damage to you, but it will also encase you in ice for 30 seconds. You can be broken out of the ice by other players just by destroying the icy crystals, but if you're all hit by it, everyone's stunned for 30 seconds.
Which we didn't realise.
Yeah, we didn't realise how this worked. I didn't read the dungeon journal before this boss. But yeah, ouch. So make sure when this happens, you quickly go up into like some higher, like elevated area. Luckily, the ice does go, so you're not taking ticking damage while you're up there either. So you actually get some FPS while she's up in the air. But as soon as she lands, the ice respawns. You've got to go back down and just continue the fight until she dies. Another potential boss you can get in the first or second slot is Blood Princess Thal'ena, which is actually the Blood Queen Lanathel's daughter from ICC, and she is the exact same in the way that she turns people into vampires. At the start of the fight, she'll bite a random player. This will give them a 1-minute debuff that will cause them to do 100% more damage, gain 10% leech, and also generate 100% reduced threat. After the 1 minute is up, they will need to bite another player within 10 seconds in order to get their buff back. If they don't bite another player, they will be mind controlled and they'll just completely destroy your group. So now you have 2 people that are vampires. Once their 1 minute debuff is dropped, they need to bite 2 more players, and then the boss needs to die before the next set, because otherwise you're going to have like at least 3 people that are mind controlled. She also deals ticking damage to every single non-vampire, and this ticking damage does go up for every single vampire. So it's probably best to have it so your tank is bitten last, because not only can they withstand the ticking damage better, 100% damage increase is probably better on a DPS or even a healer over the tank, because otherwise they might drop threat or anything. So just bite your tank last seems to be the best idea. So occasionally she will lob bolts at random targets. It will leave a pool of blood underneath them that will deal ticking damage. So it is pretty important that when this happens that you are moving out of it. But it can be pretty difficult to see because there is quite a lot of red particle effects going on at the same time. So just make sure that when you're here you do pay attention to your debuffs.
Another potential boss is Anub'esset's cousin, Anub'esset.
Yep, he's another Nerubian Crypt Lord. It's beautiful.
This guy has a Mandible Strike. This is just a huge hit on the tank that will reduce the healing that the tank takes by 50% for 10 seconds. However, this ability is on a really long cast, so pretty much as a tank, you just see this coming in and you just hit a damage reduction.
You need to hit a couple of them. They do really hurt, so just pop whatever you can.
He also casts Impale. What he'll do is he'll face the direction of a certain player, and after a cast, he'll send out a huge shockwave of like spikes that will knock up anyone that's in the path and also deal damage to that player. And also make your FPS go to 10.
Yeah, it absolutely annihilates your FPS.
Yeah. But it looks great.
It looks amazing, like as a slideshow. But like, all joking aside, it's alpha, that'll be fixed. But yeah, it's a very cool looking ability.
His last ability is Call of the Swarm. This just summons several ads that just spawn around the room and just sit there and just spit at people. This just dots players. It's pretty nasty, so it's really, really important just so your healer's not shitting himself that you kill these ads off. That's how it seems at least. But apart from that, that's all this boss does.
Yeah, it's a very simple boss, but very cool looking. Now, even though we run this instance like a lot, there is one boss that eluded us, unfortunately. He never came out, which is Mindflayer Kaahrj, and he's like a faceless one. He has some very simple mechanics, though. He has a Shadow Crash that leaves a pool on the ground to move out the Shadow Crash. He'll summon Tendrils at DPS, need to kill off, because otherwise they're dealing ticking damage to the group, so kill Tendrils. He'll also fear a target that this can be dispelled, so healer dispel the fear, and he also applies a dot to the tank, which will do a big hit after the duration has ended. So when this comes in, make sure that the tank has a CD up. But yeah, and that's it.
Sadly, we don't have any footage of that. But that's that guy. He sounds really boring anyway. So let's move on to the next guy, Lord Malgath.
And this was the guy who was spawning all the portals throughout the entire fight. This is kind of like a mini boss before the last boss. He doesn't actually give loot or anything, but he's still fairly challenging to deal with. If you fuck up, you're going to die here.
So he has a Shadow Bolt volley. This hits really hard. Really, really hard. However, you can interrupt it, so that's pretty much what you're forced to do. He also has a Shadow Bomb. This was quite interesting. It's a debuff that is placed on a random target that does nothing until it finally ends. It will explode and just do damage to any nearby players. However, if they do take that damage, the Shadow Bomb will then just move on to them. So the idea is if you get the Shadow Bomb, even if you're a melee, you just run away from the group, let it explode on absolutely no one else, and then that way the debuff's gone for good, or until the boss actually reapplies a new one. And he also has Shadow Beasts. These are just beasts that spawn that don't really do much whatsoever. They don't really do that much damage. They die really, really quickly, but when they do die, they leave a barely visible patch of goo on the floor that ticks pretty damn hard.
Yeah, it's very difficult to see, especially with the purple mood lighting and purple goo on the floor.
Yeah.
It's very hard to see. I assume they'll make it so you can see it a little bit better later on, but yeah, make sure you are moving out of that. It really, really does hurt.
So once you've killed that guy off, you'll then get one of two bosses. You can get Thal'ena. This is some sort of like spider queen, and probably one of the more interesting bosses in this instance.
Cool.
She has a venom spray. What she'll do is she'll just face towards a player and spray out some goo in that direction, and it will deal damage and leave a dot on you, so you just got to make sure that you move out of it. She also has a fell detonation. This just causes someone to explode and deal damage to the group, but the amount of damage it deals is like nothing.
And you don't really have any time to react to it either. It kind of like suggests in the dungeon journal that you should be able to like mitigate it by running away or something, but
it really didn't seem to be the case.
Yeah, it just kind of went off and it didn't really do any damage, so it wasn't the end of the world.
She also has a form of death grip that she does to players. This doesn't do any damage or anything like that. If anything, it's just more irritating. However, it does actually affect like the later part of the fight where she'll start spawning spiders. Now, how these spiders work is that they'll simply focus a player and start running towards you. And if they reach you, they just melee hit you. And it does hit fairly hard, especially if you're not a tank. However, you can stop these spiders from attacking you, not by killing them off because they actually have no health, you can't even target them, but simply by facing them. But this can be slightly difficult in some situations, especially if you're being death grip towards one of them. If it spawns, say, on the opposite side of the boss, this does happen. Also, you can get multiple spiders on you at the exact same time.
You had like one to your left and one to your right, and you're like, which one do I look at?
Well, I tried looking left, right, but really the best way of doing it sort of would have been just to run away from them, so they sort of uniformed in a single line eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a bit chaotic. You actually sort of decided to devise some sort of corner strap potentially.
Well, we hid in little Mrs. Manastorm's little box that she came out of, but the boss died too early on. But there might be a strap where you can just hide in a corner and all the ads will just never move towards you or something. But yeah, it was a very fun fight. It was very chaotic, but it was like chaos but fun. It didn't really matter if you fucked up because the ads weren't the end of the world anyway.
And the last potential boss that you could have is Fell Lord Betrug. And this guy is like, I don't know, is he the uncle of Fell Lord?
I don't know. Everyone seems to be related in this instance.
It's Fell Lord's uncle. Anyway, this guy, he has a Fell Slash. He'll just face towards a player's location and just do a big frontal cone attack that just deals damage. Just got to make sure you move from it. That's pretty much it. He has something called Chaotic Energy. This causes random players just to explode and deal damage to nearby allies. This does absolutely no damage whatsoever. It definitely needs to be increased. Because, yeah, it's barely even noticeable. But the coolest ability that he has is something called Mighty Smash. When he does this, he sends all players to one side of the room, apart from one player, and that one player is then sent to the opposite side of the room. And then they're rooted and encased within 2 crystals, and the boss will start casting Execute. It's a very long cast, but if he reaches that cast, then the person who's rooted within these 2 little crystal-y things that spawn, they'll just instantly die.
Yeah.
So the idea is that the players that have been knocked away, they need to run over and click on both the crystals, which will snap them, which will break the root, and then the fight will continue as normal. And if they don't, then the player just instantly dies.
You can kind of just let them die, I suppose.
If you wanted to, because they can't click it themselves. They're slightly too far away from the root.
You can actually, you do have abilities, though. You can keep doing damage and stuff
because you are only rooted.
Yeah. But yeah, it's quite funny when that happens. This can be a little bit buggy, though, at the moment. Like,
I got rooted and the boss wasn't casting Execute,
Yeah, it can all be a little bit funky.
I couldn't reach the tank.
Yeah, so we had to like drag the boss back over there. But yeah, that's all of the bosses. And really, if you look at the bosses, you'll be like, Alex, Loz, why are you so angry about Violet Hold? These bosses, they're not too bad. You've got some really good ones like that Ice Dragon and even the Impale one. But basically the ones that drop your FPS are the good ones. And it's not too awful. You've got a couple of shitty ones like Festerface. He's kind of a bit dull, but it's quite fun working out how he works and trying to drag him around the place. It's not awful. We haven't talked about the trash yet.
Yeah, let's move on and talk about the trash. Now, as we said at the start of the video, this trash follows the exact same formula as the old Violet Hold, the original Violet Hold, where ads will spawn out of portals, they spawn in waves, they'll go towards the door, and they'll just try and smash it down so they can go fuck up Dalaran. And if they do, we assume the instance is just over.
Yeah.
So there are 2 different types of portals that you need to deal with. In one of them, a portal guardian will spawn, it will keep the portal open, meanwhile little shitty ads will spawn outside the portal, and the portal only ever despawn once the guardian is killed off. And the second type of portal you can get is like an Elite Legion squad. that just spawns out the portal and then it immediately closes behind them. So you've got one which spawns ads and one that just is ads that then immediately closes.
Now, the Elite Legion squad seems to always consist of the same 3 enemies. You have an Infernal. Now, this guy does a channeled AoE that hits really hard, and you can interrupt it before its like tick goes off, but you really need to be paying close attention and need to interrupt it super quickly. He also sends out lines of fire that will erupt from the ground, so make sure that if that's coming in, you move out of it. You also have a caster, and this one will just do some light hitting spells on the tank, but also spawn a zone under a player that will explode at the end of her cast, dealing a large amount of damage. So you've got to make sure you are moving out of these void zones, and they can spawn in melee. So pay attention.
And they can spawn in areas where you can't even see them, such as on staircases.
Yeah, and that's a little bit buggy at the moment.
And it hits really, really hard.
It does hurt a lot. And the last mob in this set is an assassin. This will just jump around to random players in the group and poison them. It's like very similar to the Hellfire Citadel version of the assassin. He will also blind people for around 3 seconds, disorientating them. So this can be dispelled. So just make sure you dispel it.
Dispel it.
And
the dot, you just need to high it up, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you can dispel it if you can. It is a poison, so... But it doesn't hit too hard.
But with this trash pack, it's mainly about that Infernal's channeled ticking AoE damage.
Yeah.
It does so much damage. You really got to pay attention to that particular type. Now, the Portal Guardian you can get does actually come in 4 different forms, and some are easier than others. One type is a Dreadlord. This will just spam Mind Blast into the tank, but he does have like 2 cleave abilities. One is Carrion Swarm that will do a shit ton of damage to players in front of him, and one is a Vampiric Cleave that will also do a shit ton of damage to players in front of him. You can actually interrupt both of these, so we recommend that you do. But yeah, this guy can be pretty lethal if you're not paying attention. You also get a Jailkeeper. This guy would just spawn a cage that will drag in nearby players, like within its circle. If you stand on the cage, it will explode and deal an absolute ton of damage to you, and I assume anyone else within its circle around it.
Every time this guy spawned, we just used diffuse magic and ran into it.
Yeah.
And it just sort of solved the problem, really.
Or you can just move out of the circle.
Or you can just keep running
and just
away,
leave it. So it's absolutely fine. You can also get an Inquisitor that will also channel a big AoE, just like the Infernals, that needs to be interrupted, except it seems to hurt even more. Interrupting this guy, super important. And also Fell Lord. This is the last one you can get. He also has a giant channeled AoE ticking cast that needs to like be interrupted because it does a huge amount of damage. But importantly, he will throw his axe on the ground. This will deal ticking damage to anyone nearby. The thing is, the ticking animation is green, and so is the portal, so it can be quite hard to see if you're tanking him right on top of the portal. So when you do have a Fell Lord, either drag him away from the portal, or just make sure that you are paying attention to the damage that you are taking, because it does tick very, very hard. He can also soul slash the tank that will apply a debuff to anyone caught in it as well, and it will reduce the healing they take. So just make sure that the tank is the only person hit, and you can dispel it afterwards. So tank's hit, dispel the tank, he can continue getting healing. And that's it. Whilst you're fighting any of these Guardians, little ads will flow out of the portals.
Like we said earlier.
Yeah, they're kind of just shit still.
They don't really do anything, just cleave them down.
Yeah, just pick them up. They do melee hit quite hard, so don't let them go on the melee DPS or anything. Make sure you do pick them up as a tank, but that's it.
So that's all the trash that's in play on this instance, and of course we've already gone over the bosses as well. And it's usually at this point in the video that we'd wrap it up and we'd spend a couple of minutes talking about what we like, what we dislike, what we think they can change, and just general feedback, because at the end of the day, this is alpha. The whole point of the alpha is so players can test it, and we're fortunate enough to be in that position, and hopefully we can provide some sort of feedback about this instance. But it's going to take us a little bit longer this time, because I think we have a little bit more to say than what we do with, say, the other instances.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, because of course this is a bit of a special case. Always rehashing a dungeon from the past always brings back quite a lot of feedback all over the place, but Violet Hold, that's an odd choice. Anyway, let's go through what we have to say. So, although there are a variation of different mobs, ultimately the trash just doesn't change throughout the dungeon. You might as well kill the same mob every single time, and sometimes that's even the case. You'll go from one portal and you'll be killing X Guardian, then you'll go to the next portal and you'll kill the same Guardian.
I mean, that could even happen 3 or 4 times in a row, because what portal you get just is random.
Yeah, and when that happens, it just is a bit dull, you know?
Yeah, I mean, what's wrong with this instance is that they've stuck with the same formula of 6 waves of trash, then a boss, 6 waves, then a boss, 6 waves, then a boss, and you're just fighting the same mobs every single time. Let's just say even the trash was really, really fun, which I don't think would ever be the case when you have to kill 18 waves of them.
Yeah.
But they're just irritating to deal with. I mean, they have a lot of health. That's easily fixed. It is alpha, you know, that sort of thing is easily scalable. The main issue I have with them is that they don't use their abilities frequently enough. You feel yourself phasing out because the mobs aren't really doing anything, and then when they do decide to use their abilities, they're very, very punishing and they do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
And when you're sort of like monging out and not really paying attention because you're not really enjoying yourself that much, you suddenly take a load of damage and you feel like you're going to die.
Exactly. I don't mind punishing mechanics, of course.
That's great.
Exactly. It's really, really good to have punishing mechanics and you've got to do it correctly. But when it happens just randomly and for the rest of the time you literally do nothing, it's kind of like, oh shit, right, okay, interrupt very quickly. Oh, suddenly move out of this goo on the floor that's kind of hard to see because it's the same color as the portal. When that happens, it doesn't feel great, if I'm honest.
And then you have the other issue of being within the same location throughout the entire dungeon. And this is a long dungeon. It took us, on average, I say 25 minutes a run.
Yeah, something like
that.
Which
is a very, very long time to be in a 5-man dungeon. And the room itself, I mean, yeah, it looks better. They've improved it. Or, well, I wouldn't even say they've improved it. It's just different.
Yeah, got a nice staircase.
When you initially walk in, it's like, wow, this looks pretty good. It looks all quite new and interesting. But then you realize it is just the same old Violet Hold, the same old mechanics, the same old room. And it's just like, I mean, even if the room looked amazing, let's say it did look amazing, at the end of the day, if you're looking at the Mona Lisa for half an hour, you're going to be fucking bored of it and it's going to look like shit.
Yeah, eventually it would.
Yeah. So that's my kind of issue. But to bring it back to sort of a positive note, the bosses aren't terrible in here. There are a few golden ones. The interaction with Milhouse and his wife, I thought was a really great touch. I thought they did that really, really well. But the bosses aren't super spectacular. They're not as good as the Vault of the Wardens.
I wouldn't say so, no. Some of them might be on par, like the Ice Dragon boss, that was really, really good. And basically the ones that dropped your frames per second to shit, they were the really, really cool ones. They looked really, really nice, and it felt super good when you actually fought them and managed to take them down. But I agree with you, like Festerface, although it was quite nice working out how he worked, it was kind of a bit dull once you got it, and you kind of understood, oh, okay, you just killed this, and you just drag him about. So yeah, not all the bosses are equal to each other in terms of their fun at all.
But going back to the trash point, even when you did finally get to the bosses, you already kind of felt bored, and it felt like there was no progression to actually get to those bosses because you're not rediscovering new locations or anything like that. I mean, this is the reason why you haven't seen a Highjail raid again.
Exactly.
And even in the dungeons where they have bring back wave-based encounters, which is what they did in the Halls of Reflection during Wrath of the Lich King, they also did it in Nijao Temple, in Mr. Pandaria. But they've never been like the prime focus of the instance.
Exactly. It's like a small little area where you just fight some mobs. In all fairness, the Lich King one does take a long old time.
It does take a long time.
But then you've got this whole set piece afterwards, and it's not the prime function of the instance to be that wave-based thing. And in Mr. Pandaria, they even added a gong to make it quicker, because people were like, I'm getting bored here, we want to go faster, let's get through this quicker. So they actually added it so people could get through the boring part even quicker. So
and that will be the case with this one as well.
Yeah.
So it feels like they almost need to add a gong. I mean, the other reason is why revamp this instance. I mean, of course, Dalaran's come back.
Yeah.
And Violet Hold is like a pretty integral part of Dalaran. It's an important part. It's the fucking prison of Dalaran. So I can understand why they bring it back. But when it comes down to when they remake old instances, I mean, they've done it with loads now over the past 5 years or something. They bring back UBRS, the Scarlet Monasteries have been revamped, Dead Mines has been revamped. They've done loads of different places, and every time they've done it, I don't think they've ever made it worse. They've always made it slightly better.
Yeah, I'd say.
And if they haven't made it slightly better, they've just updated it so it feels a little bit better than maybe its vanilla self.
Yeah.
Whereas this dungeon, it feels exactly the same.
Yeah.
It works in every single way. And ultimately, Violet Hold was never a fan favourite. I'm sure there's a small community out there that absolutely loves it for some bizarre reason, but it's safe to say, I think, the vast majority of players do not like Violet Hold.
Yeah, no one was ever particularly fond of it. Like, I distinctively remember that people just flat out left when you were doing random dungeons and you queued into Violet Hold. It was like the Oculus. You queued into it and people were like, I can't really be bothered. I'm not really interested in this dungeon. It's not my cup of tea. And they just fuck off, and rightfully so, because fair enough, they're not particularly interesting. They're not engaging. And unfortunately, this new Violet Hold falls into the exact same trap. Like, I just don't get it. Why would they bring it back? Or if they're going to bring it back, why did they stick to the same formula?
Well, I mean, if you want to tackle it that way, how would you make it better? Obviously, adding some sort of gong would be pretty interesting. Being able to hit that 6 times and just instantly spawn 6 waves.
That would be pretty crazy. That sounds like challenge mode kind of stuff going on there.
That would be pretty funny. But I think they just completely changed the style of the instance. I think maybe you can still have the waves. Maybe you only have 6 waves, and then you get the boss, and then you're expecting 6 more waves, but oh no, shit, suddenly this part of the instance is opened up.
Yeah, that's what I expected. When I heard that Violet Hold was coming back, I was just like, they wouldn't dare just put it back the way it was, and it seems like that's what they've done. I thought they would definitely make it so you'd be exploring the very depths of the Violet Hold, being able to see all the prison, maybe able to see different parts of it, but once again, you're just still in this one same room, in this one static room for 20, 25 minutes. It's just awful.
I mean, they could do various changes with the ads. I mean, maybe they could make it so initially... I mean, this wouldn't necessarily solve the issue. It's more like a band-aid. You could make it so, like, the ads initially, they're quite weak.
Yeah.
And then progressively over the instance, towards the end, on, like, the final waves, they could be more souped up, so it's more challenging, rather than just the same mobs, the same level of difficulty the entire time. That might fix it. Ultimately, they could release it how it is now and introduce dungeon blacklisting.
Yeah, that's already a thing that we've needed for quite a long time. You have it in PvP where you can blacklist a couple of random battlegrounds that you don't want to do. I think that wouldn't be an awful idea, honestly.
I mean, if you're a group of friends and all of your friends dislike a particular type of instance, what's the harm in blacklisting it?
Yeah, and blacklisting this instance, I think, will be on the top of everyone's priority. If they give you 2, I think 1 is just determined. It's always.
Well, if you release the 5 dungeons as they are right now, Violet Hold would definitely be the one that would be blacklisted.
Yeah, 100%. Even Darkheart Thicket, which probably might take longer and probably has slightly more annoying trash, it still feels better because you are progressing through something, you're feeling a story, and you're seeing all of these different areas, and you get to choose whether or not to go down the swamp of horrible ads and everything. It's great because of that, because you can explore. It just you just sit in a room. You're just sitting in a room. It's like detention. You're sitting in a room because you didn't do your homework, so you're going to sit here and grind ads for 30 minutes. That's how it feels.
That is pretty much Violet Hold.
Yes.
I mean, it's long, it's repetitive, and really, it's just badly paced. That is Violet Hold, and I think there's a couple of ways of dealing with it. And ultimately, it is alpha. This is just our feedback. Loads of things can change before this hits live servers. That's the whole point of the disclaimer at the start of the video. These are just simply how we personally feel about the instance.
100%.
And the situation, of course, and the controversy of bringing back an old instance.
Especially one as bad as this.
Yeah. So thank you very much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy this little preview, then please do drop us down a like. It helps us out a lot. Also, drop down in the comments, see if you agree, and see if you like us having these little chats towards the end of the videos. We personally quite enjoy doing this thing, rather than just going over, just the trash and the bosses and all their abilities. It's nice to have these little chats at the end. So if you enjoy that as well, make sure you let us know, and maybe we can do it in the majority of the videos we do. And we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching.
Oh wow, fuck my life, it is exactly the same.
Let's wait up.
Can I leave now?